hired a second who did Manzanita and Ventana, and I did Sunrise and Canyon View. But this year she left and we have a new person who had been at Canyon View as well as Manzanita. So it made more sense for her to, as a new person, to be at the two schools she knew well. And while I loved working at Canyon View, I was delighted to be able to come back here because I had loved being here when I changed to Canyon View. So I'm happy to be back here. Okay, now tell me, Harry, am I in a good position for you?
Yes.
I'm going to have to turn to you. So I call this the FFO briefing with a double meaning that I wanted to update you on the things that I'm doing here, but also hopefully I'm brief. And what I wanted to do is set the stage for the 3 projects that I've been working on, which fit into our district developing deep learning proficiencies. And so each of these projects addresses our overall district goals and visions. And the 3 projects that you may have heard about or maybe just being introduced to are the Z Factor, the Critter Cam for Kids, and the Robotics program. I'm going to start with the Z Factor. Oh, actually, I'm going to start with, again, that overview of what our district has defined as important for 21st century learning. The deep learning proficiencies are the 5 C's and systems thinking. And what's important about these is that they cut across the curriculum. And so my efforts and interest has been in finding curriculum applications or instructional materials that cut across subject areas and allow students to integrate their content learning and develop these things, that these activities do these things or help students develop these things for students. And our goal, of course, with deep learning is learning with legs, that what you learn in math, you transfer to robotics or you apply in your science. What you learn in language arts actually applies to how you approach other tasks. And so your language arts we use so much today is online tutorials. And reading is essential if you're going to be a self-directed learner. And so we can't just think of reading as language arts class. It has to be reading across the curriculum, across our activities, so that students are developing those skills for independent, self-directed learning. I love that graphic, by the way. The ideas with legs or learning with legs. I changed it. It was ideas with legs, but to learning with legs. Okay. Now, the Z Factor project I want to start with, and when I first started to talk about it, I thought in terms of, and I'm fairly old, so the old Zorro movies with that slash, slash, slash. And it occurred to me that that was a good metaphor for the 3 things that really started the Z Factor. The Z Factor started with observations of tired students. I was teaching a 2nd grade robotics class on Monday mornings, first thing on Monday mornings, and they dragged in on Monday mornings. And so it really, the more I watched it, the more I thought, wait a minute, that's not how it used to be. It used to be the teachers dragged in on Monday mornings, and the students were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And so there's a big societal change here where children are coming to school tired. The second thing, the slash going this way, is that sleep is in the news almost constantly. It is really the cutting-edge research topic right now for health and fitness. Just this weekend, there was an article in the New York Times about the Seattle Seahawks traveling to London to play an exhibition game. And a big part of the article was how do you get the team there ready to go, and sleep is key. So the Seattle Seahawks actually have a sleep coach. They monitor all of their players' sleep. They provide special sheets, cubicles, everything to help their players sleep well because sleep affects athletic performance. Golf pros are another group that have really led the charge on sleep coaching and the importance of sleep for physical performance. So, and then there's a lot of new research on sleep and dementia, sleep and Alzheimer's, all things that are important to me at my age. And then finally, the 3rd part of this whole idea was that we now have technology to self-monitor. And the Fitbits, a lot of people are using this consumer technology to monitor sleep. And so those three things came together in a grant proposal that I did with the U of A, and our sort of research partner in this and lead is a district parent. Two of the people are district parents. Stuart Kwan, who is an endowed chair on sleep research at Harvard, also at U of A. And then Janet Robotics is in the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering. She's a district parent. And then we have the School of Educational Psychology. And we put together, with Catalina Foothills being a partner, a grant to the iTest program, which is Innovative Technology Experiences for Students and Teachers. And the idea there is that we're using new technologies to present ideas to students. Now, the goal of the project was to develop a curriculum on sleep. Ventana was originally the control school. So the first set of lessons was taught at Canyon View, and the Ventana students were the control group. So a lot of parents filled out forms about their students. There was a number of forms. Now, those forms were intended to help evaluate the curriculum. The whole program was to develop a curriculum on sleep. And it's been a multi-year project. It is not finished, although we are not teaching it this year. The curriculum is in a revision form, is being revised this year, and hopefully will be ready for publication at the end of the year. The idea under the NSF grant is that it will be a package that is available nationally. Okay, so the whole point of it was to involve the students in real-world data collection. And so it was divided into 4th grade investigating factors that affected sleep, and 5th grade focusing on the effect of sleep on their performance. So some of the things that students looked at are video games, technology, amount of time spent, amount of caffeinated drinks, their exercise, their sleep environment. And 5th graders looked at reaction time. They looked at a number of studies on health. They also looked at some studies on grades and sleep, and a wonderful one on making free throws that was done at Stanford University. And indeed, we called this set of things the body changer, grade changer, and score game changer. Because in fact, students who had more sleep, teams that had more sleep, had a higher rate of hitting their free throws than the same students had a higher rate of hitting free throws after an additional 30 minutes of sleep than without the additional sleep. So students had a chance to investigate those real-world things and discover those connections. Now, what was most interesting, and I have to say, developing a curriculum on sleep is probably the hardest thing I've ever done, because kids don't just jump up and down and say, "Oh, good, we're going to study sleep." It's not a big seller. What was a big seller for the children is actually strapping on the $800 Active watches and wearing them for a week. So they wore those watches for a week, and lots of students reported that they really loved that. They loved being able to tell the time, which was interesting. But they loved the fact that people asked them about it, and they could explain that they were monitoring the sleep. So when they finished their week, they got a printout of what watches told about their activity during the day, what time they went to bed, how well they slept during the night when they got up. Lots of information about their week of monitoring themselves. So that was really the highlight. So as I said, the lessons are under revision to improve and to try to take the things that were the most successful with students and package them into a really exciting curriculum. But what was interesting is when we got the results back, our students worked on it. I'm going to just show you the things that they worked on. Some of you may have seen these. What we did is do a class sleep profile, and this is a little hard to see from a distance, but just to give you an idea of what they did, is that we, and again, part of this whole project was to develop the technology and app that allowed the students to take the data from their watch, put it into this app that they could then process the data and produce charts and graphs and analyze the data. They also had activities that they could do from the app. And so what we looked at is the class sleep profile. And students looked at, okay, what does our sleep say about us? And the thing that was really surprising is that, and this is across the two schools, by the way, and 4th and 5th grade, few students are getting the recommended 9 to 11 hours of sleep for their age group. That's the recommended amount. And only one student in the 5th grade, the classes that we did, was getting 9 to 11 hours. In the, turn it upside up, in this 4th grade class, we had, let's see, one again, 9 to 11. And I think this one's the same. Now, many students are getting 7 to 8, or excuse me, 8 to 9 hours of sleep. This one is 8 to 9. 25 students are getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep. So that's better. But for their age group, 9 to 11 is the recommended amount. More troubling than that, though, is the number that is, well, so at each of the schools we had several students who were in the 6 to 7 hours a night, which is really that's really sleep deprivation. And then there were 20 or more in the 7 to 8 hours. So 8 to 9 is close, but 7 to 8 is really getting kind of far away. And so that was a big finding for us. Then the students, of course, there were, and this was new to me to learn about that, is that there actually, it isn't just how long you sleep, it's how consistent your sleep is. So, and again, there's been a lot of learning for me on this, is that the ideal sleep is every night, that you get a similar amount, and that you have a regular bedtime. And this is true for adults as well. That consistent sleep is really the key. And our data really supported that the consistent sleep was most highly correlated to the other things that students were looking at. And what we found, again, across both schools, is that few students have a regular sleep schedule. And most of the students, and it's pretty typical, that Friday night I get to stay up late and do video games or do activities or slumber parties and all of that. But that pattern, what's happened is that pattern also becomes Saturday night too for many students. And that has the effect of you actually don't necessarily make it up by sleeping later the next day, because then you sleep later, which means it's harder to fall asleep on time the next night, which means that Monday morning dragging into school. And we see that. And teachers across the district have talked about students who actually put their heads down on the desk and fall asleep right in class, or go to the nurse and lie down and zone out completely. So that late night is really that 1 or 2 or even 3. Some of the students have late nights because they have a late basketball practice or something like that. So sports affects it, and there's some very interesting connections between sports and exercise and sleep. Oftentimes the children who exercise have less sleep, but they tend to have more consistent sleep in that they're tired, they go to bed. And a lot of students who do sports really talked about, they notice the difference in sleep. I remember one student saying that when he travels with his team and is in a hotel, he said, I don't sleep well. Because they were 4th graders looking at sleep environment. And he said, and it really affects, I notice how it affects my ability to catch the ball. Or, so children do notice that. Quality also, it was an interesting one. Our children sleep really well. They're tired, when they fall asleep, they're out. So quality is not an issue. Consistency and duration are the big ones, with consistency really showing up as the most important. So the other thing that we looked at is not just their sleep, but we also had the students doing sleep diaries. And so they were recording how they felt in the morning. And what was very interesting is that many students report feeling tired in the morning. Now, when you talk to Stuart Kwan, the sleep expert, he says, we asked him one time, how do you know if you're getting enough sleep? You know if you're getting enough sleep if you wake up in the morning without your alarm clock and you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. That's what your body is naturally programmed to do. And so, for our students, yeah, I know, and by the way, worldwide problem. It was just on NPR's Science Friday too, some new research on sleep. That's not how our culture is set up. I mean, we've been on this go-go, push yourself, late nights, all-nighters to get ready for things. So it's really, it's really hard to wake up that way. But what's happening is for children, when they're coming to school dragging and reporting that most days they're tired, that's not good, because then they're not alert, they're not really ready to go and be attentive in class. And that's their reporting, that many of them had rated themselves. I think we had some scores, like 3 is when your wake-up state is really strong every day. And we had, here's, like on this one, 15 students are tired or somewhat tired every day. That's their average report. So, so these are important numbers. Okay, now they also, 5th graders here looked at mood. They found that there was a connection with fatigue and mood, getting along with others. We all know that. Kids know when we're having a bad day that maybe we didn't get enough sleep. And so they looked at some of these things, and again, the idea of the curriculum is to provide children with the tools to ask questions about how sleep affects them and then find some answers. But what I wanted to share with you, and Dave Hatfield is doing an article for the Desert Leaf about the Z factor, is what we really have discovered is how important sleep is and how important it is for our students and performance. And what we can do to really help students perform at their best is to get that little bit of extra sleep. For many students, it's a matter of 15, 20, half an hour totally changes their day. So it's not like we have to change a lot of things, but we can make it more consistent and help them get that sleep. Okay, now, one of the things that I wanted to add here is that what we looked at also is what happens to teenagers. You probably have read this in the newspaper as well, is that teenagers naturally fall asleep later in the day and then they sleep later. And that's the case for having the late start for teenagers. And so there's a natural thing that happens that's called adolescent phase delay, which means that falling asleep later and it's more difficult to get up. What we notice, though, is that this trend towards late nights for 5th graders in particular, 5th grade is more extreme than 4th grade, is this cycle by starting in elementary school then gets worse in high school because the high schoolers are doing so much more at night. And so they're calling it now social jet lag, because the students, by staying up late, are, again, pushing this whole thing back further and further and further, which makes it harder to get up. They're tired during the school week, and I know I certainly talk to teachers who talk about their first period class at the high school of students really not ready to learn. And then I did an activity with the 5th grade here with Mr. Ching's class, where I actually had them do some risk assessment. And there's some very interesting information about the fact that your body can't resist sleep. There are times when it has to sleep. So when you're really tired, your brain actually shuts down for a few minutes to rest itself. And of course, that's what affects drivers and teenage drivers. So one of the huge factors for their safety is being tired. Okay, so that's sleep. I'm going to move on to Critter Cam, and hopefully you tell me if I'm talking too much and you want to ask some questions. So the Critter Cam is new here this year. And again, I want to tell you about the inspiration. The Critter Cam project began with an FLL, after-school robotics team research project. It was a Manzanita team called the Crash Scene Investigators, CSI, and they were working on the year that we were studying issues with animals. And they were interested in the issue of roadkill. And that led them to a study of the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan, a partnership with the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Preservation, 2 Arizona Game and Fish Heritage Fund grants, and the end result was a citizen science project for 4th graders. So we piloted this at Manzanita last year, where the students, what we did is we purchased with the grant funds, sorry, I got ahead of myself here. The curriculum is 4 lessons that include games and mapping activities. Some of you, I know Orion went home and said, I have to have this game.
Yes, we bought the game.
And then they made a game as well. So they're learning about the animals and the food and shelter needs. And then we studied habitat fragmentation. We study animals, but we don't really study how much space they need. And so we studied range and we mapped range. And we looked at what happens when animals' habitats are divided by development. And that's where, of course, the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan comes in. And the need for animals to move. And what we have here in Tucson is a move to preserve and protect the ways that animals can move through our development, our developed areas, and we're protecting habitat and ways animals can move through the environment. This is the Sonoran Desert Preservation Plan. And what we have is wild areas, of course, in the Catalinas. We have them in the Tucson Mountains. There's a tortolita section. And the animals actually have to move between them to find mates to keep biological diversity. And what's happened is that they can't go through the city. And so some animals use the washes, which are a natural corridor, but we also need to protect some areas. So what we have now are 2 crossings over Oracle Road that allow this flow to go back and forth across the Sonoran Desert. And some animals actually come up from Mexico, and so there's this crossing of populations for seasonal habitat and also for mating. So we have an overpass and an underpass. And what our project did is buy 2 cameras, motion-activated cameras per school, and the Manzanita cameras are in the east side approach to the Wildlife Bridge. Our Ventana cameras are on the west side, and then our Sunrise and Canyon View are on the underpass on the 2 sides. So each school has a unique area where the motion cameras are documenting or capturing the pictures of the animals in the area. Fish and Game and Fish has the cameras on and in the structures. Our data goes to wildlife biologists across the state and actually through the country who are documenting, is this working to save animals? And so the children's job is to sort the photos. So we get a batch of photos, which are all these pictures that the cameras have taken. They have to sort the photos, and this is online. You can actually see it for graders in their team drive. They have to identify the species they see, and they have to count the animals. And this is tough, because I can tell you I have missed animals in the pictures. So having the whole class working on this, some children find a bird that I've missed, or something else. I can't tell you how many animals I've missed that children have found. And then we have, this is a great one, how many javelina do you actually see? Who does this leg belong to? Whose rump is this? So these are some of the challenges that the children have to address. And just to show you, if you go to your child's team drive, they just log in. And let me go here to, I think I left it on the gorillas class. So you will find in the team drive, you will find animals, no animal, and unsorted. And where these classes are right now is in the unsorted. They're working on sorting the animals, and I'll just show you some of the ones that we got in this group. Okay? So the children would have to move this photo into the animal file and then move it into the jackrabbit file. Okay? And I think there's only one in that. However, one of the I think, is this an animal? So one of the things we have to look at, is this an animal or is this a rock that is in the same place every time? And so, again, these are the challenges that we have for trying to figure out, let's see if we can see the next one, and if it has, yes, that it does appear to be a rock now, I think. This one, and again, here's one I missed that the kids found. The quail looking right there. And we had, so there's the back of a rabbit. There's one, we had deer on this camera. So lots of great pictures of animals for the kids to, and they're at night too, which is always fun. That badger was from a night shot. So that's what CritterCam is doing, is working with the children, having them be the citizen scientists who do this work. And for us, it gives them the chance to get to know our desert animals, learn about them, but also practice those key skills of seeking accuracy, sorting, critical thinking, and beginning to look at, as we do this over time, which animals do we see in September versus which ones we see in March. Another part that's funded on this project, the whole grade level will actually go to the crossing for a field trip. And we did this last year. Game and Fish came. We had field studied stations where the children hiked out to see their cameras. They collected information about the habitat, signs of animal activity. They did activities on animal adaptations with experts. So this is a really exciting field trip in March, and Game and Fish has supported it for this year to pay for all of the fourth grades across the district to go. So we will be going, I don't know whether we're going on the 6th or the 7th, but you'll get more information about that. Okay, so
is that something that all fourth graders do, like similar to robotics, like
yes.
all grade levels
all
rotate through
all
it?
the classes. Again. They're all the classes, now they're setting them up a little differently in that some are working as a class on sorting, some are having it as an extra activity, but all of the classes have had all the lessons and are doing the sorting, and will do so all through the year. And then we'll go in March and actually interact with our real space. So we put in for a second grant because last year when we did it with Manzanita, the parents on the field trip said, every student needs this. They actually went back to Kim Bowling and said, we want to see this continue. So we put in the grant to take it across the district. So hopefully, again, these are always experimental, not always work perfectly, but new ideas. Okay, very quickly, I just wanted to tell you robotics continues to inspire. We're now K-12. This is a kindergarten class last year at Canyon View, where we actually worked with a music teacher so that their annual musical, the kids turned the robots into clowns, lions, and elephants, and did a circus performance with the robots doing the things with the music with the children. So always looking for new ways, and then I had to put this on. We have two parents who helped with this class. This was yesterday, robotics here.
3, 2,
Fourth grade.
1, go!
Happy to get that right. So that's 3 simple commands, but getting a whole class to coordinate and synchronize was quite challenging, very challenging, and it took them 3 tries, but they were thrilled when they actually accomplished it. So we're always working on things that will excite them. And of course, the challenge that I always face is that we're always changing. The technology changes. The student needs and skills change. A real hard question for children is, in 4th grade, is what's half of 1.1? And so if I say, okay, what's half of $1.10? And they try to reason that through, that's not, I have not yet had a student who could answer that quickly, but needed to have help processing. How could we do that? Okay, we do half of $1, half of 10 cents, and then we can make the connection. So that's what transfer is all about. And of course, interests and relevancy change. This week we were doing some space tasks. related to going to the asteroid because the Osiris Rex mission. U of A is going to the asteroid Bennu. So we're always looking for new things.